Exactly.
I love that.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to You're On in 5, The Art of Understudying.
The only podcast to celebrate the work of actors in understudy roles.
Understudying demands tons of preparation with minimal rehearsal.
Or sometimes none at all.
But it can end in triumphant glory.
In these conversations, we will amplify the diverse voices of actors who have understudied. We want to hear about the actor's technique, experience, and journey.
As well as whatever's on our mind that day.
All right, welcome to You're On in 5, The Art of Understudying. I am Scott Sava, your co-host for the show, and you might know me from hosting Sundays on State in June of 2024, right there on State Street in downtown Chicago.
I am your other host, Elana Elise, and you might know me from this podcast.
And our guest today is Laura Berner Taylor. You might know Laura Berner Taylor from The Cherry Orchard at Piccolo Theater in 2012.
Yeah. The peak of my career when I met Scott Sava. We were with young babes. Thank you.
Happy to have you.
Thanks. It's good to be here. It's good to see you both. Should we tell people that I've already recorded this podcast? I was the first, in fact, person you interviewed, and then what happened to that episode?
It was for practice. I was about to say, but you are our can we actually do this thing? Practice podcast recording.
Love it.
And we are grateful because without your help, we wouldn't have known whether or not we could do this.
Well, I'm honored. I'm honored that is how I helped you on your journey to be a champion for this podcast. I'm glad to be back 4 years later.
Well, I'm glad to have you back.
Yeah.
So, whether or not you remember, we start the same way as then, and that is, tell us about your first understudy gig.
Yeah. Wow, my first understudy gig, I think, was with Piccolo, where I met Scott, actually. And I think I was 22 years old. I had already worked with Piccolo, and they asked me to hop on to the next show as an understudy for 2 roles. And it was like a commedia dell'arte play, which I had never done before. And I wasn't prepared. I didn't really understand. We didn't have rehearsals. We didn't really have any as understudies. I was already playing a smaller role as like an ensemble member in this play. So I was there watching the 2 other roles I was understudying every night. However, I didn't, a commedia dell'arte is like a lot of posing and a lot of the rules and a lot of like movement based, a lot of stock characters you have to have general knowledge of that I didn't. And actually one of the actors I was understudying got very, very ill during preview. And they were like, Laura, can you go? And it like the nightmare happened for sure. However, I had already worked with this theater company and I was friends with them. So I did feel comfortable enough being like, absolutely, you guys, I don't even know. I have not memorized these lines, if I'm being honest, because I hadn't. Because I didn't really have guidance. I mean, not that you should expect guidance as an understudy a lot of times, but sometimes, for sure. But in a smaller scale theater with not a lot of resources, I just didn't do the preparation. So I had to have hat in hand and be like, I'm so sorry. I can't go on for her. I have no idea. I just went in thinking that I would never go on. And I think that's why I was like, sure, I'll understudy, because I was like, I'll never go on.
Right.
But that bit me in the butt because then trust is broken a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but it turned out fine. She ended up going on very ill, so we didn't cancel the preview. It was a different time. I feel like that was like 2010, a whole different era of theater.
It's crazy how this stuff has changed since then.
Yes, in the best way. I think,
Yes.
There's a lot more transparency. There's a lot more standards we hold people to. which has paid off for actors, creatives, people in positions of power. So that has been helpful. But I think because I was so young, I had not a lot of professional theater experience under my belt. I just didn't step up to the plate.
Do you remember if you were paid extra for that understudy role, or was it just kind of slid in with your ensemble role?
It was just slid in. And I think that's probably also why I didn't. I think, they just wanted to sort of, let's cover our bases. We have to have a name under, and like we have to like check this box and fill this space. This person is understudied, but I think I was paid $50 for the whole play, which I was like, wow, I'm being paid. Like, I think at the time I was like, $50. It's great. But I was doing ensemble work where I was like making noises, and I thought I didn't even have a line. I was just like hitting blocks and like making faces and doing other poses and feeling like I was learning commedia dell'arte. But no, was not paid extra for that. Do they do that? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, they should. And I know because I've been involved. I became an ensemble member with Helen Hambeck this year. So I'm involved in some of those. Thank you. I'm involved in some of those conversations about, how are we paying our understudies? How are we making sure that they're ready to go on? Because you can't just... I mean, you can, and many people did do it as, with no support. But, you want to set people up for success.
Yes. Yeah, you do. And I think COVID really had a hand in that people have now really started taking understudying seriously, because a lot more, even in non-equity and sort of the smaller equity houses, it is much more common for a bunch of understudies to go on now, that they have to take it more seriously as you are part of this cast, actually, instead of how I have generally felt as an understudy, is that you're sort of on the outskirts a little bit, or not really invited to the table. But that might just be me and how I perceived myself and how I like walk in the world. But I have, always felt like a guest, or sort of one step removed from the production as an understudy.
Have you had any more recent understudy roles?
Not recent. I mean, look, I live in LA now. I'm an LA gal. I haven't done a drop of theater since I came to LA.
Oh yeah.
But the last understudy thing I did was, I think, in 2018 at Timeline, and that for sure had much more. The pay was weekly, and the rehearsals were weekly, and they did take it very seriously, even pre-pandemic. But my last theater experience was 2022 with Rivendell and Interrobang, their last little collab. Yeah, but I didn't. And that was post-COVID, which was, we had understudies go on for that for sure, because there was a COVID outbreak right at opening. But the Timeline experience was also, I did feel again like I was not quite, and not to their fault. I think they tried to make everyone feel welcome. I think I just always go into being an understudy as feeling like you're not quite involved, which isn't true. And I think it has to do with the person who is overstudying you as well as the understudy. I think it's their sort of responsibility as a person who has had people understudy me. You want to make them feel like this is our role together. We are, if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you are wondering how I do this quick change or whatever, or anything, that there's an open door, and it's not just you have to watch from afar and figure it out and sort of just be there to catch the ball if it happens to get thrown your way. But I think back in 2018 when I was a lot younger, I think I went into situations also feeling like, you know, you want to be the principal actor. You want to be on the court. You want to be the one doing the show. And I think it's hard, and it's always a challenge to yourself to have like a little bit of humility, which I know I didn't have even in 2018. I don't think there has been a single time that I have understudied that I have not thought, I'm a better actor. You know, like that. And that is such a toxic thought to think. And I think it doesn't help anybody. And it doesn't, least of all you. And it also just kind of sours the way that you show up in the room, I think. And even if the person I was understudying had like taken me under her wing, I think I would still probably give off this, even though we're good at covering all of that, even if you're like, I'm better, but like you're good at covering that, it still shows up in little ways. So if I could go back, I definitely wouldn't. Anytime I would have that thought, I would let it flip, like let it flip over.
Yeah. Well, Laura, given that, how do you perceive yourself treating your understudies? Right? Like, that's the question.
Yeah, and I think because of that, there was a time where I feel I was understudy for multiple shows back to back, and I think having the feeling like, oh, I'm always an understudy, when I was no longer an understudy for something, I wanted my understudy to be more comfortable around me because I never felt comfortable enough to talk to them, or to feel like I'm involved. So I think sometimes I would overcompensate and try to make them more comfortable, which is also a part of like how I operate as a person. I like like, please like me. I'm trying to help you. But the last experience I had with Rivendell, Charlotte Markle was my understudy, and we were already friends. She's Matthew Martinez's roommate, so I had known her for years. So I, like, of course, we were already comfortable around each other, and she was like really open with, like, we would talk about the play, and she would tell me sort of her take on the situation, and we would have discussions on moments in the play, which I loved. And yeah, I think just because we had that friendship previously, it was a lot easier for us. And even before that, I think I just wanted my understudies to feel like they are part of it, because I know how lonely it can feel as an understudy. Even when you're with the understudy cast, there does feel like this, you're just one step outside of where the magic happens. And I don't want people to feel that, because it is, theater at its core is such a collaborative, beautiful art in that way, that understudies, you know, if we have everybody in the ring together, it just elevates the whole process, because it's that trickle down of everybody's energy and everybody feeling included and everyone feeling like their family. That makes a huge difference in the overall vibe.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that enthrallment, you know, the table read and discussions, like understudies were always welcome.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're encouraged to participate, ask questions, and we're welcome to attend any rehearsals, right? So, like, I like that about that. That's not always the case. You know, sometimes It is like, you know, come to the table read, yes, but like, those are your seats over there. And this is where everything's happened. I've only seen that, like, very few. That's very rare that I've directly witnessed that, but it has existed. And I'm hoping that kind of thing doesn't take place. And one of the ways I've taken advantage of the podcast and what we're, you know, trying to do is just reminding people that understudies are actors, right? Yeah. Like, there's no, like, you know, like, understudying is an acting job, you know? Yes. and so, like, there's this thing, used to be anyway, it's obviously better thanks to the pandemic, but that it is a secondary kind of thing, or you or even having to pay your dues by doing that, like, whatever, like, I'm glad to. I at least feel like those ideas are kind of dissipating. Like
Yeah.
it's literally an acting job, and we all, as actors, we do want the principal roles, but we also want to work, and
Right.
that is work.
Yeah, it is. And I think it is important to go into it feeling that, because I am glad there is a podcast about this, because it understudying can be like the butt of the jokes. I mean, like that there's sketches where people are like, the understudy's like giving the principal actor like a cup of bleach. It's like it's a joke that it's like, well, you're second string or something, and as actors we always want to be chosen too. So it's like you're just under chosen. But you're right, it is a job, and it is, if you go into it with the intention of connecting with people, learning, sort of growing your practice on a harder trajectory, because it is so much harder. The job is harder than the principal actor, for sure, because you don't get to get up on your feet. You don't get to feel it every time you're in rehearsal. You sort of have to absorb your visual cue of what's happening in the rehearsal room, and then let that hopefully take you, if you have to jump on your feet in a performance, and of course, like, you have once a week rehearsal sometimes, but that's even not as much as the principal actor gets. So it's a harder job in a lot of ways.
Between Piccolo and Timeline, are
Mm-hmm.
there any, because you said like you were understudying a lot in the beginning of your career, are there other share-worthy stories from your experiences?
I mean, there was just like a series of, after Piccolo, so I was a company member at Piccolo for a number of years, and then I felt like, oh, I should work at other theaters. I don't know why I'm not auditioning for other. You just get sort of complacent. If a theater keeps casting you, you're like, I'll just stay here and not try anywhere else. But then once I tried other places, I would get understudy, and it was first, I think, the New Coordinates, but they were the New Colony at the time, and it was Joel Kim Booster's play, Kate and Sam Are Not Breaking Up. I understudied Mary Williamson, so that was like the first step outside of Piccolo, and did not have any rehearsals for that. I mean, again, another small theater that doesn't really have and this was like 2013 or 2012. It just like didn't have the bandwidth to sort of support an understudy process. So I was required to watch the show every week, and that's it. I wasn't even required to come to any rehearsals. So once again, I mean, the other time I had understudied was that time at Piccolo with the Commedia dell'arte show, and this was my second experience. I didn't memorize that play at all, because I felt like there was a long time in my youth that if no one asked me, or if no one guided me in a certain way, I wouldn't do it myself. So if no one was like, if no one was depending on me, which they weren't, I wouldn't put in any effort, which was a character flaw for me that I've started to work on. But again, I never went on for her, gratefully, because I never ever memorized a single line in that show. Obviously, I saw it enough to where I was like, yeah, I know what happens, and this happens, and that happens. But that was just, I just agreed to be an understudy with them so that I could put another theater on my resume, and so that I could get to know that theater company, so that maybe they would hire me again. But I couldn't tell you any other thing I learned from that experience, other than because I went in with such a loosey-goosey intention that I was just like, well, I'm just furthering my career, I guess, in a way. And like working with people that are different from who I've worked with. But of course, I also felt the same sort of well, why not me? That ego is so powerful to to constantly tell you you're better than this. It's so destructive to constantly. There's a healthy way to have ego for sure, and that's really, you need it in a lot of ways to have confidence in this career, but it so quickly flips and makes you bitter and feel like that moment doesn't work because I'm not doing it. Like that's such a toxic thing to think. And when you're young, of course, I think that's really easy to start thinking that way. And after that, I went to profiles, which can we say that? Can we talk about that thing?
Alana and I just made a face.
Yeah, profiles is a smear. It has a black smear among the Chicago theater community now, and rightfully so. But at the time, it was a really prestigious, like, you want to work with that theater. They do some gritty stuff. Like they're like kind of what Steppenwolf was at the beginning. They do like dark, edgy, what Chicago theater storefront is. So people were chomping at the bit to work there. And so was I. So I took an understudy gig there too. And that was the first time I had weekly rehearsals with a theater. And I, again, came in feeling like, well, I'm going to do this character my way and not do exactly what the principal actor does. But I kept getting notes from the assistant director who was directing the rehearsals to do it the way she was doing it, which made me feel, I was like, that's not what I want to be doing as an understudy. I at least want to have some creative control over the character. But again, like, it challenges your humility all the time. And I was, again, still not in a place to be challenged in that way. And so I look back on all these times, because I've like journaled recently about all of my experiences as an actor and in theater. And I can really see my mindset and where I was these early formative years and how I thought about myself and how I showed up. And not that I showed up negatively, because you can always cover it, of course. And we all do to some extent, but the thoughts I was having were just so like prideful and egomaniacal. And I think that experience was tough because I did go on for her. And in that play, I get murdered. It was Beth Henley's newer play, like the Jacksonian, which Beth Henley wrote, Crimes of the Heart. And this was like a new play at the time, I think, or it had just been on Broadway or something. And I was like a slutty waitress who gets murdered by someone at the end. And I had to go on. And in rehearsals, we didn't really go over the murder scene a lot. And this was like 2015. So there wasn't like, and there was an intimacy in it too. This was like pre-intimacy coordinators. And I think there was a fight choreographer, but the fight choreographer wasn't involved in the understudy stuff. The assistant director just sort of took over and was like, this is the moves. This is kind of how they do and it was not like a gruesome murder. It was like someone put chloroform over my mouth, and then I struggled for a while and then went limp in a bra and underwear. And I just remember being really nervous about that scene specifically because that's the thing about nerves, is like, if you don't feel like you're prepared enough, your nerves are going to skyrocket. And as an understudy, you're never going to be prepared enough. So of course your nerves are going to be at level 10. But I mean, obviously everything ended up being okay. I just remember being so exposed, not only because I was in a bra and I knew that going into it. I was fine with being in a bra and underwear, but it was like that on top of having to do this death scene that I hadn't had a chance to practice, that it was the biggest shock to date in my understudying, because I had never gone on, and I had also never had like these rehearsals or an experience where like this is a pretty meaty role that I have to now go on for. that I've been understudying. And because we had weekly rehearsals, I definitely learned all these lines. This was the first time I learned all the lines in an understudy role. But I think after that, I went to like Windy City Playhouse and understudied that, which again, that was weekly rehearsals. And that also made me feel prepared. I never went on for her. But it felt like we had kind of a handle on the play because it was like consistent weekly rehearsals. We would run the play multiple times. The stage manager for that was really great and organized. And so I think like as I went on and as my career continued to, in my craft, continued to deepen, my understudy experiences got better and more rich. But, and then I went to Timeline. So then it was like multiple times that I felt like, oh, okay. I have kind of a handle on how to do a play when you have little preparation for it. Because for Timeline, I knew before even going into rehearsals that I was going to go on for her 2 times. That was like part of the agreement. So that was the first time. It wasn't like, you might go on. This was the first time. It's like, you're definitely going on for this weekend, so be prepared. And I was, and I actually memorized those lines before we even started rehearsal. Because I had, again, when you have, I don't know, a structure, and when you have someone who is like, you are dependent on for this is, we're laying out for you exactly what we need from you, then I feel like I could meet those expectations. But when it was less structured and more loosey-goosey, I was just like, well, I'm not going to even memorize these lines. Yeah. Which is not great to admit.
Have you ever understudied more than one role in a show?
Just that Commedia dell'arte one, which I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's the only time I had to do 2. And that was too many for me, because I know that that's often the practice of asking people to have multiple tracks. It's really hard. That is really, really hard, because it's like, who do I focus on? How do I feel prepared for either one of these? How could I possibly, and I don't even know how people run those rehearsals. Do you do one track one week, one track the other week? I don't know.
We've done them in the same. So I've been in a show of 6. So there were 4 understudies, and we would run stuff, and we would just like be like, okay, I'm gonna do it now as the other track. But that was a different show. That was a Carol Churchill kind of vignette, but still, each actor still had a track, but it felt better. I didn't mind it as much as when it's not vignette, when it's a full just like character arc, story arc. But that's also the last time I willingly understudied more than one actor, or even character, because I don't like it.
Right. I mean, and it makes sense if it's just, okay, this one character has one scene, this other character has one scene, so you're not even crisscrossing, and you can, do that. But when it's like, these are 2 main characters, which it was for the Piccolo show, it was 2 of the, I was like, there's no way I can memorize all of that. I mean, I'm sure there is a way.
Yeah, sure.
People do it. I just didn't. So
that's also a really rough first exposure to that part of an acting job too. Like that's rough.
Yeah, and being like 22, you just don't have any of the tools. I mean, you know what? Some 22-year-olds do. I think it took me a longer time to sort of develop as a person. So I think I was just the immaturity I had at that age and sort of my lackadaisical, I'll just show up and that should be enough, nature sort of kicks you down the line,
Yeah. I think understudying is really great for like type A people. I'm not one of them. But like, people are super organized and that's what I think we've kind of seen that with a few of our guests who have done the thing where they're understudying multiple roles. Like they are super organized. They have run every track at home.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm just like, that's so much work.
Look. And the type A people that's the secret to success. Let me tell you what. It's truly like.
I was like, I'm like, y'all better take it easy. I didn't know what you were about to say about the type A people. I'm just sitting here like,
Yeah, like, crap.
Yeah, what else you gotta say about type A?
What else?
No, I think like I envy sort of people who are like that, because I wish, the people who make all the actors who make spreadsheets of like, this is the casting director I met, this is the person, like, here's the last time I did that, that is it honestly is beneficial. And it's so hard as a creative person to be even inclined to do that side of it, to be inclined to put in the hours of boring at home. I'm going to memorize, I'm going to walk through this play as this character, and then I'm going to do it again as the other character. It does set you up for success. It is, because nobody wants to do the work. Nobody wants to do that hard work. I'm guilty of that 1,000%.
That's so interesting to me, because I have not. I mean, I've understudied as many times as I can count on one hand, I think, right? But I never, like, the work that it takes to prepare is the same work that I would do to prepare as a principal, right? So it doesn't feel to me like that, the way you just described it doesn't resonate. Like, it's not boring. It wouldn't be boring for me if I was a principal, right? And so if my goal is to be able to perform as if I was, right? Like, if I have to go on, I don't want the concessions being made because an understudy is in. I want the rest of the actors to be able to do the same show that they're used to doing with this different face, right? And so that's where that is driven. And I've heard similar things from other guests of ours. It's like because that's the job, right? Like, the job is to be able to do it, and not relying on if something bad happens, right? If an actor needs to go to a wedding or whatever, like my job is to be prepared for any circumstance at any time. And then because we never know what will happen, because that's the point of having understudies, understudy, as you know, from Out of Love, right? Like, nobody was counting on a broken foot, so.
It was a knee, a lot of
foot. Appendage. And lower appendage. Nobody was counting on that, right. But so then now Nancy had to go with for like the rest of the show. So I think those, those are examples of reasons why it is that preparation is, it's necessary and it's the job. And so when you take it on, and when I first moved to Chicago, there was a short play festival going on. Susan Laurie Parks, like, every theater or whatever were doing a play. So there was this huge kind of pamphlet. And I recorded all the theaters in a spreadsheet, their websites. I signed up for all of the mailing lists. And then when I had to reached out to ask about audition stuff, I recorded like that. Like, that was how I dived into the Chicago theater scene by creating a spreadsheet and recording my contacts, like the casting directors, artistic directors. I was, writing them down. And it was only just because I don't know that I would have done it if I didn't have this thing in my hand that had almost every theater in the city, right? I don't know that I would have created that same spreadsheet. I would have done the research, but I don't think I would have done that. But because I had this amazing resource because of this year-long festival, I just had it at my fingertips. And so I made that thing. And it really helped a lot.
Yeah, and with stuff like that too, you really have to make it yourself. Like, if somebody else had that spreadsheet and they just gave it to you, that's different. You're not going to absorb it in the same way. Right. And especially when you're jumping into a new city, It's probably very helpful. Berner, have you done anything like that for LA?
Like spreadsheets?
Yeah, well, spreadsheets or like how are you like organizing? Because there's like hundreds of casting directors there, and
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Well, that's why people do that here. There's
yeah.
so many casting directors, there's so many agencies, there's so many managers. It's that took a lot of getting used to, and I think, I mean, Alana, to your point, like if that's not something that feels like a drudge to go through, that's a great place to be. Because I think for me, walking through the apartment as the like, that's not the fun part of acting for me. It's like it's being with the other people. So it's like, though that is necessary, that part of it, I don't want to do it because it's not why I do it. And like the same with doing the casting workshops and sending and like you can do this in Chicago too, and I didn't ever actually do this in Chicago because there's 4 casting directors, so it's like either they know you or they don't.
Right.
And I mean, you can reach out to them and be like, hey, just reminding you, but here, you want to reach out to them every 4 months or do a workshop with their assistants or I am just getting into doing that. So, and it's great to be a part of the LA community because the LA community feels like they are it's like people call it the Olympics of acting here because you have to be on top of your shit. You have to really go for it. And being around people like that constantly elevates you because I'm doing things that I've never even imagined myself doing just because I wasn't around. Like just being around the studios here for one thing feels like magical. Like I live right next to Warner Brothers and I live in between Warner Brothers and Universal. So I see the Warner Brothers Tower all the time. I go past Universal all the time. Like Disney is down the street. It just does something to your psyche to be in the place where these things are made. And I think because of that, it's like unlocked this little limitation I had, which I had for so long when I was in Chicago, even thinking about LA, because Chicago was the only place I lived in my adult life. I went to college, and then right after college, I moved to Chicago. So it was the only city I knew, really. And it was a huge city to me at the time. And I felt like, oh, LA, I can't. LA, that's too much. You go to LA if you want to be famous. I could never hang there. But I'm so glad that I stopped thinking that because now I started like writing scripts and started thinking about like making my own films that I was never interested in writing. I was always like, oh, I would rather just be a part of someone else's project. I would rather just be an actor or just be the cog in the wheel that I'm used to being and not think of like what it's like to produce or what it's like to direct or what it's like to start from scratch making your own film with a group of people, writing grants, all of these things I've never ever considered because it's just like the possibility is now in front of me and it has changed my way of operating in my life. But I mean, as far as spreadsheets go, I still don't like making them. But as you had said, when you do make them, it's more of a gratifying thing when it's like, okay, I'm plugging in the little cute, and this is this, and you make it from scratch on your own. It's so much more gratifying than just like downloading someone else's spreadsheet. And I've tried to really be like clear about what my intention is for everything that I do. Like even this podcast, before I do something, I think like, what is my intention? My intention is to connect to Alana and Scott, to like open my heart to them, to feel a community with them. What is my intention for taking this casting workshop? Because before, if I didn't clarify to myself what my intention was to further my career, to like win someone over, to hopefully get an audition. And that puts you in a different mindset when you go in. Like, I'm judging the other actors. I'm getting annoyed with the actors, like, taking up space and being needy. I'm feeling like that person's being fake. That person's, that is the way that I, like, filter things if I don't clarify my intention being, I'm going to make a friend. I'm going to make someone's day. Or I'm just going to enjoy being a human with other humans. That has shifted the way that if I do see someone that I would previously have been annoyed with, or an actor that I'm like, that person really is trying to be seen, I have, like, more empathy for them, or I just see them in a different way. Or I'm like, oh, maybe they are being genuine, or maybe they do genuinely are, like, positive people. And that's been a game changer for me. So that, and it's with everything. Even when I read a book, I'm like, what's my intention for reading this book right now? I'm going to, like, give myself a time to focus, read 40 pages, or I'm going to actually absorb the material that I'm reading. So that's been something I've been trying to practice more because,
And what you're saying earlier about intentionality and understudying, like, it's so important. Like, am I understudying this role to work with somebody? Am I understudying this to make myself a better actor? Am I understudying this for whatever reason?
Is this a story I want to tell?
That.
Yes. Huge. That's a huge one. Yeah. Is this going to challenge me creatively? Is this something that is this play asking questions I want to ask questions about? Yeah, that's a huge way of, like, because then you do go into the room in a much different perspective, and you don't go into the room thinking, like, I'm the better actor, I should be the one up there, which is, like, my constant mistake. So no,
and I'm gonna take that with me into my rehearsals too. I'm doing the Golden Girls show for Helen Handbag right now.
Yes,
and,
I love the Golden Girls.
Oh, I'm playing Stan.
Oh my gosh, I wish I could see it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Handbag's great.
But I'm also assistant directing the show, and I'm also, like, running from, like, tutoring to rehearsal, and sometimes back to tutoring, but I kind of realized the other day, I was like, I'm not thinking about intention and, like, thinking about being a leader and setting an example in the rehearsal room, like I should be, and like I can do, like, so I've been really thinking about that lately, and, like, making sure that I'm not half-assing my acting, making sure I'm not half-assing the assistant directing, and it's still a struggle, but it's a good struggle.
How do you find the balance of directing and acting in something?
It is. I don't know if I have yet.
It's tough.
Yeah, I don't honestly, I don't know if I can. Like, it's really tough to, like, sit in the, like, on the behind the table and then run around and go, for your entrance, and then, like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm actor Scott now. Oh, I'm assistant director Scott. So, but I'm trying to find that balance. Alana, have you ever directed and acted in anything?
Only one little thing in college, and it was like poetry and dance stuff. It wasn't a play. I have a hard time imagining how to do that. Like, I don't know what that's like. So I've been curious. There was something I was working on that I was like, oh, I might direct this, but I want to be in it, and so that's kind of in the air. But I would also be okay with just having someone direct it, and being in it. Because I don't know how it works. I mean, people do it all the time, and film actors, directors do it. And they do have, at least in film, have the ability to watch it, to make some determinations about what happened while they were in the scene. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe if I used video to do that same thing, right? Because also, like, for me, being, if I'm directing and then I'm in a scene, like, I don't know how to just play inside the scene without like paying attention to my scene partner as the director, right? Which is already a thing I have, right? I'm always engaging with a directorial eye unintentionally, right? And so, you know, which I was gonna say which gets me in trouble, but like should get me in trouble. Most of the time it does. And I've had an actor or two be very unhappy, but I've figured out ways to like ask for permission to offer my thoughts if I think that I cannot shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's like so that's a thing that I've always had that isn't necessarily beneficial to me just operating as an actor. So if I were actually also wearing the directorial hat, then I feel like that being in the scene and watching everything would still be a very different experience for me, and I wouldn't necessarily be the full actor that I'm capable of being. The times where it's happening when it's not supposed to be happening, it's not my focus, right? Like what other people are doing on stage is not my focus. I just notice some things or whatever. Or we're maybe having some challenges with a thing. And then I think that, you know, I have thoughts about how we can resolve and, you know, whatever the challenges are. So like that's different to me from that being my responsibility while I'm in a scene.
Yeah.
And it's tough too, because you're balancing a lot of egos maybe. And not all rooms are conducive to that kind of collaboration.
Yeah, it's definitely like I feel like I just did a film where one of the actors was also co-directing, and so there are two directors, which was interesting in the first place. But one of the actors was also, and she was mostly my scene partner, which at first I was like, oh, this gives it kind of a different power dynamic since she's my scene partner, but she's also my director. It turned out that the other director was agreeing to just direct her scenes, and then she was going to step back and direct the other scenes. And they did because, you know, we had like a monitor, but we weren't doing playbacks for every take, because that eats away so much time. Yeah. You really can't do that if you're directing. I mean, they can on the big budget, and they do. If Ben Affleck is directing it and being in it, like they're gonna probably do the playback on every take. But we weren't doing that, so she just wasn't directing the scenes that she was in, although I had another friend who just directed and starred and wrote and produced her own short film. And I was like, that's so much. That's so many responsibilities. And of course, if you're wearing all of those hats, like some of them fall by the wayside. And she was saying, like, of course, she didn't have a chance to watch any playback. They just had to scoot. She had to just trust what people were saying to her. She wanted to direct because she wanted to have a control over the editing of it. And really, the director has the only control over that. So that's why. But she didn't ever direct the other actors. And she didn't ever get to, like, watch what she was doing. So she said if she could go back, she probably wouldn't direct. But so it's such a tough balance because of the power dynamic nature, too, of actor director, if you're like one of the actors but you're also not. So
I think that's a great place to take a break. We'll be right back with more Laura Berner Taylor.
Yay.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. We want to continue bringing you new stories of understudy triumphs and stumbles. So if you want to support our mission, it would mean a whole lot if you joined our Patreon at patreon.com/understudypod. All right, we are back with Laura Berner Taylor, and now it is time for the breakdown. And our topic for today's breakdown is, what's the craziest place you've ever performed? Like a non-theater, anything outside or exotic in any way?
I mean, I guess outside. I think outside has been the toughest as far as crazy, because it's like your voice, that's a real challenge. And I find this with film actors, which I'm just around film actors now, that they don't have a handle on their voice. Like the care for the voice isn't as much as it is for theater actors, because you have to have a resonance to your voice. You have to have a vocal practice that film actors don't think they have to have because they just whisper.
Right.
And that, that for theater though, like especially if you're outside and there's no reverberation, there's no bouncing of the sound, it's so hard to not scream. And it's so I think probably in a park, but that seems so lame to answer this question. I think a park Shakespeare was the weirdest place I performed, I suppose. Although I guess like I performed at a church and a school. Those are also
Piccolo's
regular.
kind of a funny place to perform, right?
Oh, that's right. It was a train station.
Yeah, it was a train station.
Yeah, I guess I forgot. You forget all the things that you've done,
right?
No,
but they set it up really well. They were like on the inside. It really was a.
It looks like a theater.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Mine, I was thinking about it. I've done a lot of school shows, so a lot of auditoriums and classrooms and stuff like that. So, with Cabaret, we performed in the upstairs of Chief O'Neill's restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Over there on Elston.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. It turned out to be the perfect spot for that play, and that production. But part of our dressing room was the kitchen, the upstairs kitchen. And our bathrooms, I'm pretty sure we had the audience go downstairs to use the bathroom, because the bathrooms we just completely colonized, because there were like 12 people in the cast and just 2 kind of small bathrooms. And then,
Where did we perform $10 House? What was that thing?
Oh, yeah. Well, we did it up at the Opera House in Mineral Point. And then the other place was Glessner House.
Yeah, and those are like historical museum memorial places.
It was like a historic house, and it didn't create too much of a difficulty to do it in there. Like the acoustics were okay, and we just put the chairs.
And the lighting, they set up lights and everything.
Yeah. What do you got, Alana?
So many places.
Yeah.
But the first place I was thinking about, because doing improv, you do bar prov, right? But so we had done it, but there was an occasion where we were in this like very large bar. I feel like it was near Wayne State University or on the campus, or just like on the borders of the campus, right? And it was huge, and I don't know why we were there. Like there was no, these people in this bar definitely weren't expecting improv to occur to the extent that we ended up just like playing with ourselves, not sexually, but just like we're not getting that. Like nothing's happening. Maybe 2 people were watching us because it was like, oh, something's happening up there. But we essentially just like improvised and joked with ourselves because it was packed. It wasn't just that it was large, it was crowded. But I can't recall what should have been the occasion that took us there. Like if people should have known that there was going to be like some sort of show or not. But as bar prof go, that was like the worst instance of it. You usually have like a crowd of the crowd watching the show,
for you.
And I'm pretty sure they couldn't hear us. It was strange. So that was the first thing that came to mind. But I've done like shows in just like non-traditional spaces. But in Detroit, there was actually a loft like that people lived in, their loft that they also did shows in. It was called the Abry Act, and so it was equipped for it, but not really, right? So like they had like seating of like whatever seats, but there were some rafters, but there you could sit on in a like a lazy boy or a folding chair, and the playing area. The most dynamic thing about it, so I did 2 shows there, but they did Sweeney Todd in this loft space, and it was like you not for 1 second did you feel like you were in some random small, like they had a live band. It was like three or four
Wow.
pieces. Most of the, like, it was actors who like played the instruments, right? So like they were doing all of that, but like it was just this massive tiny production. Again, I wasn't in that, but I've performed in that space, and it was donations based. They would pay us after every production. Some nights everybody get $10. Some nights we'd all get 40, depending on how drunk the people were or how they were feeling. Like they were like fill that bucket as they were leaving. And so that was a strange space. And I've done like some site specific stuff. I've done the like Frozen or like mannequin on the street kind of stuff, right? Which obviously isn't a play, but like it's a performance.
You've done that?
I have.
That's
That
fun.
surprises you?
A little bit, yeah.
Why, Scott?
Well, is it were you like what were you like dressed as? Like were you like a Grecian goddess
I
or
don't
something?
remember.
Or...
That is a good question that I really wish I could remember.
Was it the type of thing that someone would put $1 in the thing and you would do like a movement or like twirl around?
No, we were still like, and we would try, like we would stop somewhere, be still for X amount of time or whatever. Maybe something would happen relating to us, but we were still, and then we would move again, and like be in another place. The only thing I remember about it, the only specific I remember about it is that Naima Funk called me in for it. Like she's out in LA. She's from Detroit as well though, but she was like, once I met her at Second City, like she will always like pull me in to do stuff, whatever, and I'd be like, okay. So that's all I remember about that mannequin on the street gig, is that Naima got me hired for it. She was doing it as well. But yeah, so yeah, I feel like there's probably other stuff, but those are like some bigger ones. Ebriac was like, I was recently looking through pictures. It's where it's not where we met, but my buddy Frank and I did a show there, Frank Sawa.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
No relation.
That was our
Sava,
second show
Sawa.
we did there. Right. Spelled exactly the same as Sava. It was just really new. The people who I worked with there, it was just a really great space. And they lived there, and they were just doing this because they loved theater, and they had a big old loft, It was magical. A magical time.
Yeah.
So many of them are.
Yeah, I remember there was a loft over on Lincoln by Ashland, and one of my buddies lived there, and so we had free rehearsal space there, which was great for our theater company at the time, and we also performed a few shows there, and it was cool because it's like this kind of secret place that you can't just walk into off the street. You wouldn't know where to go. And then you're like, and like people would be surprised that it was like somebody's apartment. There were like 7 people that lived there, and they were all artists. And it was a good time. I liked doing that.
Yeah. It's time for props!
Oh man.
So, Laura, props is when we give props to people that we want to.
Well, I mean, it's been so long since I've been in the Chicago scene to give, well, and I guess I would give props to the last people that I performed with. And my understudy, Charlotte, again, that was a great experience. That whole process was very tough because it was a new work. And the whole cast was sort of game to let it change all the way up to opening night. So that was a really tough thing to do. And I think I would give props to that whole team, since it was one of the tougher experiences I went through as an actor. And I'm glad it was the last experience, since I was more capable then than I was 10 years ago to handle that.
Yeah.
But probably more capable now, as we get more capable every day,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your props don't have to be confined to Chicago theater. If you have other that you want to express, because people can listen to this anywhere in the world.
Oh my, is that how this works?
Imagine that.
You're putting this on the wire across the world? I just thought people would be like, stop talking about LA.
No, and also I want to add, like, if particularly anything specific to understudying, like people you understudied, people who understudied you, stage managers, assistant directors, anybody who helped you get there to what you
needed. Which that's what I thought it was. And the last time I understudied was 2018. And Lucy Kirsting was our SM. She was amazing. She made us feel like we were. She was great to make us feel like we were a part of it. And she really checked in with us all the time, made sure that we were comfortable, make sure we had everything we needed. And even the director, it was Damon Kiley. I forget people's names so much now, you guys. Now that I'm like getting old. But he was great too, because he was like, if you ever have any questions, they did try to make it so that I felt welcome. Other than that, I mean, here, Berner Taylor, I want to shout her out. She was a Chicago actor.
Yeah,
do you know her?
Yeah,
she's great.
She
love her. She's so supportive. She's so great. I'm so grateful for her and Claire O'Connor. I'll shout her out too. She's also from Chicago. The three of us are out here. We hung out once together, but now we hang out separately. But we're all Chicago people, and I'm so grateful to them as a support system and as people who like want to be like, what are you doing and how can I help you get where you want to go? Because I'll give you any information you need, and I'm just so grateful to have people like that around. Yeah. Do you guys do props too? What are your props?
Yeah, we do.
Prop them up,
Scott.
My current understudy, Al Duffy, is fantastic, and they've been stepping in sometimes during rehearsal so that I can watch, but also so that they can get a run of the scene. And that's been super helpful, and they've been they work at Dollop, so they're bringing pastries and stuff all the time.
Oh man,
it's the best, truly. And all of our understudies on that show are really good. They've all been attending almost every rehearsal, which is really, it's really impressive. But we pay them well, so it's good.
That again makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, I'll say that one.
I'm going to shout out Jenny Lamb and Nathaniel Andrew. I might have shouted them out last year because I did a thing with them, and then they brought me back. And this process, I'm going to be directing a bunch of short plays, and Second Sight is the producing organization, which is a collective Jenny Lamb has put together. And all these plays take place specifically in non-traditional spaces. So by the time anyone hears this, we will have done these short plays at the DeSable Museum of African American History. And Nathaniel is kind of the producing person on this round. And they're really great, not just to me. Like, I'm grateful that they enjoy working with me and wanted to do it again, but also this kind of nurturing of playwrights, right? Mm. And helping playwrights, get their stories up and out. And so it's really great. I'm grateful for them. And shout out. Props.
Shout out.
Yes. That's awesome. Laura, is there anything you want to share about anything at all you got going on? Anything we can see? Again, we're looking at 2025, right? So anything way to highlight yourself and what you got going
on? This past year I directed a film, and then I also produced and acted in another film that's now in post-production. And I gotta say, so different from theater in the fact that, like, although it's like we're all actors though, and if you get a group of actors together, we all have this mindset of like, okay, I did my job and I'm out, but there's this whole post-production side of it that you have to have the stamina for, and we're in post for both of these films right now, and it's by 2025, they'll be out for sure. And I'm also producing another feature that is going to run the festival circuits and hopefully join the PGA for that, which is like free. Well, hopefully, we'll see. And then I'm now writing a short that I will have hopefully filmed by 2025. I have a goal. I'm giving myself deadlines. Yeah, but writing, again, that's something I can't believe I'm doing. I never had an inclination to write, but writing is fundamental. I think everyone should do it because writing is everything. We have to write in every capacity. We have to write captions for things. We have to write our bios. We have to write grants. We have to write applications. If you can communicate something in an artistic, genuine way, through writing, that's a fundamental skill I think all actors should try to have. And like creating a story from yourself instead of being like the person who absorbs someone else's story and tries to bring it to life. It is a different way of strengthening yourself, I think, as an actor. So hopefully by the time this airs, I will be in post-production for the short film that I am now trying to get producers on, which Berner Taylor has agreed to be the producer. So that's why I want to shout her out.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I've got going on. What about you guys? What do you guys got going on? Okay, so let us know.
Well, for me, besides the Golden Girls show, I actually have not been doing a lot of acting this year. And
who has? The industry is in a flux.
Well, I did an acting.
You did an acting?
Mm-hmm. You did an acting.
I did a couple weekends ago. It was
that Yippee Fest?
Yep, it was a 5 minute and 10 second play. I did it with
5 minute 10 second. I love it.
Amazing. But I've been writing too, actually.
Yes.
Just at the beginning of the year, I was like, I've kind of told people I'm a writer before, and
you made Redline to Howard.
Well,
you've been writing for a long time.
Yeah. I don't know why I consider that to be like something like not a thing, but it was a thing.
But it is a thing.
Yeah. But that, like we were talking about earlier, feeling like having multiple roles on a production and feeling like you're not really fulfilling either of them. I've really felt that during that, especially with the acting of it. So that was frustrating about that. But I set a goal for myself to finish a script by the end of July or something. And I did. And I had a director friend. She read it and gave me some notes on it. And that's the farthest I've ever gotten. Well, other than Redline to Howard, yeah.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. But that's great.
Yeah. So, because we didn't really have any kind of mentor or anything like that on Redline to Howard. We were just kind of throwing that together,
Yeah, which that's great too. But it's when you have someone who's like, "Hey, let me give you some feedback." That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm just trying to kind of break it out and just knowing that the things I'm writing, it might not be the one, right? But it'll be one on the way.
That is so important because it's that begets more creativity. And I think when we're I'm going to pour everything into this one script, I'm going to make this film's going to make my career, this is going to be a festival darling, it's going to all of that is so destructive to think it's all a stepping stone and might introduce you to this person, or it might lead you into this direction, but it can't be the thing that's going to be the destination in your career, because it's so easy to think that. So
and then you get so precious over everything, and everything has to be perfect. So
it kills the creativity of it. So
anything else going on?
In my life, I just joined a volleyball league.
Oh, great!
Yeah, it's the Premier League. It's not just social. I didn't know that going into it. I met this person and we hit it off, and she was like, "Do you want to join my volleyball team?" And I said yes. but I haven't played volleyball since like middle school. And then she was like, okay, let's practice. And then it became like very serious. And I was like, I can't. This is much more. I just thought this was a fun, like we're just rolling around in the sand and there's referees. There's people taking score of like how many spikes you get and how many and you have all the stats online of I'm stressed about it, but I'm also going to put myself in the position of letting myself be bad at something and fail at something and just continue to get better because I'm definitely going to be bad at it at first.
Yeah.
But
that's a fun, different thing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, Berner, we like to wrap up the podcast with just a question of what advice would you either give yourself when you started, or what advice might you give somebody starting out today based on, what you've learned in your career? Yeah,
that's such a good question. I love asking people that question and getting their answer on that. And it's tough, right? Because it feels like there's a lot of things you could say. Mm-hmm. But I think right now for me, the most important thing that I've focused on and felt has been beneficial is to be able to have self-discipline to control your thoughts and what thoughts you're thinking, to be aware of your unconscious beliefs and your unconscious thoughts, because if you aren't aware of them, then they sort of run your life and they run your habits, and you do the same thing and you wake up and you're like, why am I in the same place I've been in for the last 10 years? And it's because you're not aware of the thoughts that you think about yourself. So if I could tell myself one thing, it is to that for sure. And also to have control of your nervous system. I think that and your thoughts are like the key to great performances, great relationships, great just the way that you walk through life and show up with people, and like what you put out and then what you attract. So, I mean, and that's even hard to tell someone, because it's like, okay, well, I'm thinking right now, people are judging me or people think I'm stupid or something. But if you immediately replace that thought, if you notice yourself thinking like, what I just said was dumb, and think like, no, it's not. I'm brilliant. I'm smart. And I have something to say. I have something to add. That is enough. So just like hearing yourself think of a negative thought and just thinking the opposite immediately will get easier over time to start just thinking the positive thought. So that is what I would tell myself as an actor.
Nice.
And a person, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What are your answers to that? Because I always want to hear what other people would tell them. No? Come on. You can cut it out. You don't have to air this.
That'll be for our last episode ever. Maybe we'll just interview each other for that episode. No, that would be
That's a great idea.
We did that. We did that before you helped us. We did each other.
You did? Oh.
Yeah.
So I was the first outside person.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So maybe when this all ends, we could do it again. We will. So many years will have passed by the time we're doing our final episode.
Right. So you'll probably have a different answer for it then than you will now. So you might as well say what your answer is now.
Thanks for joining us, Laura.
Okay. Message received.
We could literally talk to you forever.
I know. I can
talk to both of you forever, and it would be so much fun.
Yes.
But we all have lives, so we got to get out of here. So thank you, Laura, for being on the podcast and sharing your experiences with us. And Chicago misses you.
I miss you guys too.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation today with Laura Berner Taylor, and that it gives deeper insight into the art of understudying.
To send us a question or give a suggestion of someone we should interview, email us at understudypodcast@gmail.com.
Or hit us up at understudypod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
We want to thank all of our Patreon subscribers, especially Marcella Huff and Stanley Sava.
If you want to support the show, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/understudypod.
Our theme song and all other music are by Laura Mackenzie.
Our episodes are edited by me and produced by me and Alana.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice and tell your friends.
And if you hated it, tell your enemies.
And their parents.
And their stupid parents.
Bye.
Bye.